50% of women or people get divorced in this country, like you need to have your own career. I can remember specifically being told by my mom, you're responsible for your own happiness. And I think with my dad telling my sister and I, your marriage will probably end up in divorce. You don't know what you're talking about. That's ridiculous. Of course, that did happen to me. I've been married twice. My sister stayed married only once, but I guess and he would say, one of you guys will probably get divorced and I want you to be responsible. And so I remember sort of laughing it off, thinking, why would he say that? That's sort of crazy. That would never happen to me, but actually it did.
Managing partner at Gallery Residential, Tracy Bowers shares how curiosity, education, and empathy shaped her leadership journey. From starting in leasing during a tough job market, to earning multiple degrees while working, to leading massive portfolios and launching her own company from zero, Tracy breaks down what it really takes to build and scale teams. We dive into Enneagram leadership, people-first culture, using AI without losing the human touch, and why staying curious is her greatest advantage.
Usually when people start a management company, they already have a client in mind. I was like, we did that, we didn't even have a client. At the time, the company's name was Pollock Shores. I think my first day there, we had 4 properties, and when I left, it was with the properties we had awarded on top of what we were managing was almost 400.
That's crazy, yeah. 100x in 10 years.
Yes.
But what I want to understand though is, where did you get the courage? Because it is pretty risky, right? What were you feeling?
Well, I have a partner, Bruce Sanders, who worked with me at Rangewater, and so we decided to...
Property managers lose hours chasing rent, while delinquency and filing costs add up to massive losses. The financial impact? Millions in unpaid rent sold to collections agencies that recover just 20 to 30%, while taking a huge cut. Now, the Kelsey you trust for leasing helps you recover more rent in-house, reducing reliance on agencies and maximizing revenue. With Collections AI, Kelsey automates rent and move-out collections, from the first missed payment to move-out, while ensuring compliance across jurisdictions. Easily train and set up Kelsey on your company's collections process, including CARES and state-regulated workflows. She doesn't just set reminders. Kelsey answers resident questions, tracks promise to pay dates, and follows up persistently to keep payments on track. Need oversight? Corporate teams can monitor collections in real time with Zuma's dashboard, while site teams use the Chrome Assistant to track payments and even respond as Kelsey when needed. Kelsey also evaluates resident risk with AI, providing instant insights to help you make smarter renewal decisions. The impact? Doubles collections velocity, reduces filings, cuts site team workload by 85%. Stop leaving rent revenue on the table. Let Zuma's Collections AI handle the heavy lifting while you focus on what matters. Get started today.
So let's start with a little bit about you. Maybe you can tell us where you grew up and where you're from, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, I grew up right here in Atlanta, Georgia. So my family moved here in 1978. So that puts me in 7th grade, and so, which wasn't always fun to move. That wasn't a great year to move. But we grew up in a town called Dunwoody, Georgia. It was a suburb. Now it's more of an in-town neighborhood here in Atlanta, but went to high school here, went to college at University of Georgia, and moved back to Atlanta. So I've actually really haven't lived anywhere else.
That's awesome. I moved to India actually when I was in 7th grade.
Oh, wow.
Same time, a little bit further.
Yeah, a little bit further, but yeah, it's definitely a hard time in someone's life at that age to move, which I'm sure you felt the same.
Yeah. What did you feel?
Well, I felt that, most of the people had grown up together, so it was really hard to find a friend group. And in fact, I really didn't feel like I had a true friend group until I went off to college. I had friends, but I was sort of always the, little bit on the outside of the friend group. So
that's interesting. And what were you like, I guess, as a kid? Were you more introverted?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Were you?
I wasn't introverted.
No.
I was pretty extroverted, but I sensed that. Do you feel like that's part of the reason as to why it was hard to I guess?
Yeah. I was definitely on the shy side, and just didn't have confidence as a kid, and really sort of more grew into my own when I was in my college years. Well, or my last few years of high school were great. I can't complain, but really came into my own, I think, when I was in college.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I'm the oldest, and then I have a sister 3 years younger and a brother 4 years younger.
Okay. What was your relationship like with them growing up?
Oh, it was good. Really, I mean, we're very close. My sister was in the industry as well. She also went to University of Georgia. So we were, I was a senior, she was a freshman, but very close. And then my brother, he was more of an engineer-minded kind of guy. Went to Auburn, which is a little bit down the road, and but I actually introduced him to his wife, who was one of my leasing agents.
No way.
Yeah, so we're all in the business. Okay. I feel like
were your parents in the business?
No, my parents were recruiters, and they actually had an office right down in that building. So I came down to downtown Atlanta a lot as a kid because this is where their office was.
And what was your like, because that's interesting to me that if they were all in recruiting and you guys all got into real estate somehow, why do you think that is?
I think it's just where we landed. So when I got out of college, it was 1988, and there were no jobs. I mean, very few people in my graduating class actually got a job for what their major was. So we all moved back to Atlanta.
Because that was a crash?
Yeah, there was like 86 was really bad, but 88 it was still, there was not, we basically all came back and got like server type jobs, just trying to figure out what our next move was. I ended up saying, okay, well, maybe I could go back to school. My degree was in MIS, which is pretty funny because I'm probably the least computer literate person in my company or any previous company I've been in. But you got to remember back then, it was really just it was management information systems. It was just learning programming languages. So we didn't really have PCs. What we use today didn't exist. But it was really, I felt like it was a degree of solving problems. Like you start at point A and you figure out how to get to point B, which is what we do every day here in our industry. So, so that was what my degree was. And some of my girlfriends ended up landing leasing jobs. And I was like, well, that sounds fun. And so I was like, I'll do this for a little bit until I get my real job. And here I am, quite a few years later. It's
so management information systems. So I studied industrial and systems engineering, which I think at the time when I was deciding my major, I think like information systems was like one of them because I basically was like really curious about business and engineering, and I didn't want to necessarily double major, but I wanted to like combine the two. So I stumbled upon like industrial engineering, and I think information systems was in some schools offered it too. You mentioned your brother was really or more science oriented.
Yes.
How did you land on MIS then? Are you also more like?
No, I mean, I think I'm more of a creative than math science type person, but I had a very strong teacher in high school. Like we actually had an Apple lab in our high school, like with the square Macintoshes. Remember, I'm sure y'all have seen pictures.
Yeah.
So we actually had Apple computers. So I was in there, learning how to use that. And so I just became sort of like an expert back in the day because, no one had their own computer.
Yeah.
And so that was just sort of an easy major for me because I had done so much of it in high school. And we learned like in high school, we were learning Fortran, COBOL, like all the languages. So, I liked it because it was like a puzzle. And so I just continued that in college.
And how were you in school, like academics wise and stuff? Did you prioritize
average.
it?
I was like A's and B's. some C's if I didn't like what, I was very into, what came first was my party atmosphere and my friendship groups. And I was very involved in my sorority. I was president my senior year. I was very into the whole friendship thing.
Okay.
And so in my social life. And so I knew I had to maintain, I had to maintain a 3.0 to stay in. That was the rule for my parents. So I think I ended up like with a 3.3 or something like that.
This is college.
That was college.
College.
Yeah.
Okay.
High school was similar.
So in middle school and high school, if you said you really kind of came into your own, I guess, kind of end of high school, beginning of college, what were your priorities then? Like middle school, early high school, were you into sports, or what was kind of your focus?
No, I was, I guess my extracurricular activities, I took dance. I was on the swim team in high school. I got into cheerleading, which was very important to me. So just really focused on that, and just the whole, feeling of camaraderie and being part of a team. Our team, our sports teams were really good in high school. So we got to follow, it was a great place to grow up because the whole community came out to support all of our teams. Like my junior year, we went to the state football championships in Valdosta, Georgia. So that was a really big deal. My high school experience was really great.
So I talked to some of our mutual friends.
Okay.
And discovered that you are an Enneagram 2.
Yes.
I'm an Enneagram. I think I'm 3. I'm the achiever. I don't know. Is that 3 or 4? It's one of them. 3. Okay. So I'm 3. Where do you think that comes from? Like, why do you think you're a 2?
Actually, I think it comes from, going back to, I didn't have middle school here, believe it or not. It was elementary school was 1st to 7th grade, and then we went straight to high school in 8th grade. So that was unusual, but that's how they did it here in DeKalb County.
So 8, 9, 10.
Yes,
11,
there was
12
we were sub-freshmen, subbies.
Wow.
So I think going into high school at 8th grade, you can imagine how scary that was. And I was, already shy, and I always sort of, I knew, not that I was bullied, but I always knew how it felt to, maybe not be in the cool group, or I felt, just like always being like an outsider. And I think that, really is sort of what a 2 does, is it really takes on other people's feelings and things like that. And has a lot of empathy towards other people. And I really probably think it started there.
Mm. So how was that expressed then as a 8th grader or 9th grader? Like, you had empathy for who exactly?
Well, I think at that age, it was how I felt, is like, wanting to be part of something bigger, not sure how to express myself, those type of things. So I was I felt, very shy, not confident. So I think as I grew my confidence, as I got older, then I could relate back to somebody how they felt when they were in that position.
Oh, I see. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. But then as a kid, would you say you naturally, I understand how, now in your current day, you look back on your situation and you want to be able to help people that way. And that probably informs why you're an Enneagram 2. But what do you feel like your natural state was back then? Does the question make sense? Like, it sounds to me like you're saying that you've evolved to understand and have empathy for that person in that situation. But what about you at that age? What were you like? Were you naturally also more on the helpful, empathetic side?
I think I was. And I spent a lot of time by myself, actually, like moving here in 7th grade. I spent a lot of time with myself and my dog, believe it or not. And, my siblings were at that point a lot younger. So, I was really into books and anything creative. Like I loved, just making things, arts and crafts, that kind of stuff. So I could keep myself entertained, I guess, by myself.
So was this like after school then? You would just after school you'd be okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because the age gap, you said 3 years younger. The middle child is 3 years younger.
That's right.
And then the youngest is how many years younger?
4 years younger. So they were
4.
like in
Okay, so they were
third and
closer.
second grade. Yeah.
Okay.
So when we moved here,
Okay.
it was like my parents had just started their business here. So mom was going to work with my dad to help him start the business. So it was, it felt at that age, like 7th, 8th grade, there was a lot of alone time.
And how involved were your parents? They must have been pretty preoccupied starting a business then at that age.
Yeah. I mean, my parents are amazing people. My mom is, she was always telling us, you're responsible for your own happiness. Don't ever rely on somebody else to make you happy. You got to be, that's your responsibility. And then my dad was, just a great leader, a great businessman, always teaching. His message to me was, it's sort of morbid, but, Tracy, 50% of women, or people get divorced in this country. Like, you need to have your own career. Don't ever, rely on somebody else. And so he was very much focused on having my sister and I be prepared to make our own, make our own money and be able to support ourselves. So. Yeah,
you mentioned earlier that you wanted to be a part of something bigger. Mm-hmm. Did you remember feeling that as like a kid?
Oh, yeah.
You remember feeling that? Mm-hmm. What did that feel like?
I think it was just...
Because that's pretty, that's pretty young to be thinking that way, I feel like.
I think looking back, like I love being part of winning teams. And, as a female, it's like, especially with a lot of sports, that's what cheerleading was exciting to me, because that was a way to be part of, the pep rallies and part of the football team and being part of that whole experience. So I did feel like I was part of the whole, that whole experience during high school. Mm.
So going back to your parents at the time, because we all have this with our parents where we hear something as kids, and we most often don't absorb it at the time. But when you look back, when you're 20s or 30s or whatever period of time you start looking back and reflecting, you realize that the advice was actually more sage than you thought or useful than you thought. At the time, did you remember feeling like this was like advice that was relevant to you, or did you connect the dots only looking backwards?
Yeah, they must have repeated it a lot, because it's, I can remember specifically being told, by my mom, you're responsible for your own happiness. My dad, and I think with my dad telling my sister and I, your marriage will probably end up in divorce, was like, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. That's ridiculous. Of course, that did happen to me. I've been married twice. So not that he predicted. My sister stayed married only once, but I guess that and he would say, one of you guys will probably get divorced, and I want you to be able to be responsible to take care of yourself, and if you have children at the time. And so I remember sort of laughing it off, thinking, why would he say that? That's sort of crazy. That would never happen to me, type of thing. But actually, it did. And I'm really happy that, I have 2 children, and of course I took, a lot of maternity leave, but I always went back to work. And I was able to pick back up right where I left off and continue my career. So I was always, I've always been very happy that I did that was my choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read somewhere that even though the divorce rate is 50%, I think about 9% of people that get married are still married but chronically unhappy. So if you add, if you include that percentage as an unsuccessful marriage, then it's almost 60% of marriages end up either divorced or in chronic unhappiness. How do you is it like luck? Can you actually, because the thing that I'm not married or anything like that, but I think about it a lot, because I think that if I reflect on who I was 5 years ago versus who I am now, I'm like a totally different person.
Oh, exactly.
And to me, it seems almost impossible to imagine, especially if you're a growth-oriented person and you're constantly learning, and which I'm sure you are. How do two people like come together and then over decades, as each person grows, how do you like grow? It feels like it's kind of luck.
I think it is.
Know?
I think so. I think it's luck. I think it's really hard because, when you think, I got married the first time at 25. So, I mean, you don't even know who you are. But I think especially back in that day, we all went to the same, a lot of us went to University of Georgia. We all moved back. So we were able to continue with our same friend group after college. So, where today, you graduate from college, everybody goes their separate ways. Well, we all came here. And so it was like, if we didn't get married, then we would be breaking up with our friend group at the same time. So not that I didn't love Todd or he was a great person. It just, as we started growing up, we grew different ways. And so, that was, and I think back of, I don't think either one of us was willing to break up with our friends too, because we had this really tight, and all of our friends, they were all getting married too. I think the year we got married, we went to 13 weddings. So it was, we were just continuing college on as married couples. So it was definitely a fun time. But then once we became, we were living alone by ourselves without the friends, that's when I was like, maybe, something's a little off here. But again, we were very young and didn't really, use, now it's such a easy thing to do is to go to therapy and things like that. And that wasn't really a thing that you did back then. That it was that long ago, but it was in the, early 90s.
So I guess like what advice would you have then for people who are in their 20s and 30s, like trying to figure out whether they should get married or not?
Yeah.
And to who?
I mean, I think there's so many more tools even like the Enneagram, knowing what each other are. Like we just went into things blind and, you immediately think that people should think like you think, and that's not the case. Like there's, especially with the Enneagram, there's 9 different personality types. You have all of them, but you're more dominant in one. And so understanding the other person's personality type is a game changer. But just, going to therapy, having people teach you these things and to teach you about the other person, probably maybe, I don't ever regret anything that's happened in the past because, one thing that didn't work out led into something else that, my current husband, Johnny, we got married, had another daughter. And so we have 2 daughters. I have Natalie with my first marriage and Annie with my second marriage. And so, none of that would have happened if it didn't happen exactly the way it is, the way it did.
What other personality assessments do you use?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really gone deep in the Enneagram, but I understand the DISC, personality test. But I mean, the Enneagram's really been my favorite. There's the Strength Finders as well, but again, I like the Enneagram. The Enneagram.
How do you use it within your company, if at all?
Oh my gosh, we use it all the time. So, when we have everybody take the test, so everybody knows what their number is, and then we teach and then everybody learns what their team members' numbers are, and then we teach. We actually have an Enneagram class each month, and so we have an expert on our team that teaches these classes. So we have 400 plus employees. So we haven't. I'm sure not everybody's done it, but that's the goal, is to get everybody trained on the Enneagram. And then you can just take it to the next level. You can do how do Enneagrams communicate? What's a healthy number versus an unhealthy number? What happens? And when a 2 is stressed, how does that person act when they're stressed? So it's so interesting. And then when somebody reacts a certain way, you're like, oh, okay, I understand. You're not like, I have a great example of a person that was my assistant for 20 years. Wow. And every time I would ask her, I mean, I love her. But every time I would ask her to do something, she would question me back, like, but why do you want to do it that way? And wouldn't it be better if we did it this way? And I'd be just like, oh my, I would just do it. And we laughed now because come to find out, she's a 6 on the Enneagram, which is really a protector, or like really what she was trying to do was saying, hey, if you do it this way, this could happen, and I don't want that to happen to you. So she was really trying to protect me and not trying to question me. And so as soon as I realized that, like, I was never annoyed again. I was like, oh, she's just trying to protect me, that kind of thing. So that's one of the many stories. But you should always have a 6 on your team, because if you don't have a 6, you could just walk right off that cliff.
Have you always been reflective?
I think so. I'm just trying to understand, why things happen, and try not to be angry about it, but just try to, if something doesn't go my way, try to understand why. So. And
what drives the need to be reflective for you?
I think just to learn, so when that situation comes up again, how to handle it better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. For me, I definitely am reflective. And I think it's similar. I think for me, so the achiever Enneagram is type 3. And I can't remember the breakdown, but one of the needs to do things is you tie your worth to your achievements.
That's right. So you probably have a to-do list.
Yeah, to-do list, very structured.
And it's very, if you don't get everything checked off, you probably get really upset, and that you're very competitive. And so those are all great things. Like you definitely want to have achievers on your team too. Like, Dana Pate's a 3, and Janine, who works closely with me, is a 3. And so I always call them the doers. They get a lot of stuff done. So I love having 3s on the team.
Yeah. And I think that's why, for me, self-reflection is kind of like because I feel like I'm always driven by how to get better. Right. But if you think about the implication of that basically is implying that you aren't good enough in some ways, right? Because you're always trying to get better.
Right.
So the underlying issue is oh, you don't feel good enough. So I find a lot of this reflection. I've actually been using ChatGPT, which has been really helpful to talk through your current situation. You can ask really creative prompts, and it really helps you self-reflect much more deeply than, I don't know if you've ever tried it, but yeah.
I mean, I keep using, it's not natural for me to think, it's not even natural for me to think, oh, I can Google that, because I didn't grow up that way. And then, but now it's when I turn to use it, it just amazes me every time. I'm just like, this is so amazing.
It is insane.
Yeah.
There's this, so there's something in AI called MCP, which is Model Context Protocol. And everybody in the AI world is super excited about this. And basically what this means is that the next iterations of AI is going to be much more personalized. So a lot of, if you even look at ChatGPT now, right, there's memory, there's actually ask for things, it's much more personalized. So,
so you can just sort of start having conversations.
Yeah. So I'm kind of I want to get the AI glasses. So it records my entire life, and then it can feed all that. Because imagine how cool it would be to be I was talking to Tracy a year ago, and we were talking about Enneagrams. What was her Enneagram again? And it'd be able
2.
to pull it up. Yeah, 2, exactly. But yeah, it's incredible how far things are going. I'm super excited. I genuinely think that people are sleeping on AI and not really, it's just been so useful for me. It's incredible. And especially, I don't know why I wasn't doing this before, but there's the voice thing that will transcribe it to text. So now I don't even type. I just click the voice thing, and I just talk for a minute, 2 minutes on what I want, an instruction the same way I talk to an employee, and then it transcribes it, and then it types it in, and then it just gives me the breakdown. It's so useful.
Love it. Yeah. It's pretty exciting.
It is. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we talked a little bit about kind of your upbringing, college, and we talked briefly about your origin story in a multifamily, but tell me again. How did you get into the industry?
So coming out of college, no job, moving back home into the parents' house was like, okay, like this is not cool. Like, how do I need to get out of here. So I actually went and looked for an apartment without a job, which now is pretty funny because you can't get an apartment without a job, right? But I didn't
back
know.
then, could you?
No, I don't think so. But I got a job on the golf cart because when I was on the golf cart, it's like, do y'all need any help in the office? And they're like, yeah, we do. So I got a job and an apartment on the same day. And I was like, this is great. And I just immediately fell in love with it because one thing, like time passes so fast in this industry. And I don't know if you ever worked retail. I mean, everybody's worked at the Gap, right? So, I mean, here in the, it seems like time stands still. And I mean, my very first week, I was just like, it would be 4:00. I was like, oh my God, I haven't even had lunch yet. This is amazing. So it was just, I was pretty much bought in from the very beginning, still not thinking that would be my career just because it wasn't a typical career back then.
And why were you so bought in? Exactly.
Just how, just how fast the days went, the variety of things that you got to do. Like it's, you get to do a little accounting, you get to do marketing, sales, you're a leader, you're a manager of people, you get to work with the maintenance team. So you're learning maintenance. The cultural differences on your team that's amazing. Like everybody grew up differently. Like you're not, everybody's really different. So you get to learn, how they were raised, how they think about life. So I love that part. New construction, like I was immediately on new construction properties. So I got to learn all about that. So it was just like one thing after the other. So I was, again, I went back to school. I went here at Georgia State. That's right behind us here, these buildings. And went at night while I was leasing. That was a degree in organizational behavior, which is also interesting because it's a business degree with a psychological background.
And this is your master's?
This was a master's.
Okay. And this is how many years into you working?
I mean, it was pretty much right in, like this was within, I thought I was leasing and going back to school still to get my real job after this. So it was pretty much back to back. But then I just sort of fell into it, got promoted up to the corporate office, was doing different kind of jobs. Like I was the only person that knew how to operate a computer. So that was sort of funny because you can imagine, because that was my major, but nobody else, we were doing like WordPerfect, Lotus, those type of programs, but nobody else knew how to do it. So I was like the expert. And so, I was getting promoted, year after year to the next level. And then, I worked it was called the Worthing Company. It was a local Atlanta developer. So then I got to say, hey, can I decorate the model units? Can I, because I always had this, love for interior design. So they're like, sure. So then I got to start designing model apartments.
This is all at the
Worthing Companies. I was there actually 20 years.
And that was the first job and you were there 20.
But it was like a couple, a couple years in. And then it was like, well, I need to learn how to read these architectural plans. Can I go back? Do you mind if I go back to school at night and get my interior design degree? And they were like, sure, we'll pay half of it. So then I went back to school and got interior design.
Third degree.
Yeah.
Okay.
All in my 20s. And so did that. And then that's really been beneficial because, I've been, most of my career, I've been helping developers with new product and being able to help bring new ideas and being able to understand, work with the interior designers. So I almost feel like that's my hobby and I get to do it at work. So it doesn't even feel like it's a real job.
Okay, so I want to pause for a second. So there's a lot of things going on. So you graduate, You start working, you are getting a degree, and then you got another degree, all while you're working still.
Yes.
So where does this need to do all these things come from? Like, why were you doing so much? And like, I guess why? What was driving that?
Let's see, what was driving it? I think I was just trying to find my space and where I could fall in this industry. And, and then as I was doing it, I was realizing it, like, I liked everything. I even liked the accounting piece. I love putting budgets together. So, I mean, in the end, this industry was perfect for me, because how often can you say that you can have so much variety in your job? And I still have that today. I get to do all those things. So, but
were you consciously thinking that you wanted to do like more and take on more? Or was it just happening?
I mean, again, our father was very goal driven, and so like on New Year's Day, we had to sit down and write all our goals for which we hated, and we had to watch tapes, like VHS tapes on like Zig Ziglar, stuff like that when we were in high school and college, maybe even younger years. But, maybe so over time that just sort of developed into our minds. But I could say, my brother and sister are also very successful. But yeah, I don't know. I think I would have, if I could have picked a major from the very start, it would have been something like interior design. But I was sort of told I had to be in the business school. Because my dad was a recruiter and he could tell the people with what degrees got jobs. And so it was sort of like, well, that's, as long as you can do anything in the business school. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll, management information systems. So I think the interior design piece was just something that was more of a passion of mine.
And when you think about all of these things you were doing in your 20s with the degrees and the jobs and growing your career, how much of it do you think was driven by your own volition versus like, I guess, your early influences? From your parents from your dad?
I realized, so when I was promoted up to the corporate office, another big thing that happened, like at 26, is there was an opening in the regional director, regional manager position. And I was like, oh, I'll just sit here and answer the phones until you hire the person, right? So I was 26, but I had gotten my master's degree. And so 3 months later, the owners of the company just sort of came to me and said, you're doing a great job. We just want you to be the regional director. So at 26, I got promoted to a very high level. I hadn't really even been a manager before. And so I think that made me realize, oh my gosh, this school thing, it really works, So I was like, well, what else are they going to allow me to do if I go and get my interior design degree?
Oh, so you think the reason is school? You think school?
I think they could justify it. I think too, they felt like that they saw something in me that maybe I didn't even see in myself. But I think they could justify it to the rest of the workforce is because I had gone back to school.
And what was your self-view at this time? What were you thinking of yourself?
I was, I was pretty confident at this point. I was really building my confidence. I was 26. I would say I really didn't know what I was doing until my mid-30s. But I think everybody feels that way in their 20s. There was an older manager that she was in her 50s. So you can imagine, like, she's, I'm half her age. I'm managing her. But really, I'm calling her on a daily basis asking, okay, how do I handle this? So that was sort of funny, behind the scenes. She was just sort of helping me through it. Every decision I was making, she was guiding me, being a mentor.
And at what point did you start feeling like, okay, this is the career that I want to like invest in and build myself in?
At that point, like, especially after getting the interior design piece, Because I was able to, the Worthing companies, we were a developer, a management company, and a construction company. So once I got the interior design degree, I was able to go in and sit with the construction, VPs and draw out floor plans and build, give my opinions of what the amenities should be and what the finishes, the features. So that was just really, really fun. And, I think at that point I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And
if you were to kind of reflect on the things that really worked for you and you were to give advice to people, I guess, in your position, back then, like what would you say are the 2 or 3 things that people should prioritize in their 20s or as a leasing agent or as a regional to kind of have a similar trajectory that you did?
One, I think I always say, like, always keep learning. Like even today, I'm now in this 36 years, but just know that, I'm still not an expert. Like I still have to continue learning. For example, the Enneagram. I didn't fall upon the Enneagram until a couple years ago, but I felt like that was life-changing. If I had known all that back in the day, I would just think of all the mistakes I wouldn't have made. So that's, my biggest thing is, just continue educating yourself. It can be going back to school. It can be, reading books, doing podcasts. But, the other 2 things I think is just always having empathy for others. Because for me, we're all working hard, but bottom line, these are people's lives that we're dealing with. And that includes your coworkers, your residents. It's so easy to get upset and to get mad, but just to always put yourself in their shoes. I constantly do that. And I think it sort of is not what people expect. It's not the expected. So, you can really just have a real conversation and just really try and solve what the issues are. The third, I think, just always being curious. And when I say that, it's sort of what you're doing to me right now, which is sort of uncomfortable because I'm usually doing this to other people. Like I usually it's like, oh, people don't know all that about me, but understanding, when I was saying the people, all the different walks of life that work in our industry, like people come from all different backgrounds and just learning about, where they grew up, that tells a lot, how they grew up, they might have been the first one in their family to graduate high school. A lot of people in our industry didn't get a chance to go to college, but their children will get to go to college. And it's because we've been able to provide a career for them that, they're really the first ones in their family to have a career. And so it's changing the whole trajectory for their children's lives. And so I think that's really important and it's very interesting. And I say, just always be curious.
Empathy was one of them. How do you manage empathizing with all of these different stakeholders without like succumbing to the emotional toll it takes, right? Because having empathy means you're in some ways feeling what other people are feeling. Yeah. You're trying to put yourself in that shoe. And now you're multiplying that across your team, across your residents, across your stakeholders, your investors, your whoever else. How do you prevent that from like taking over you?
I think I let it take over because I think it's important that, these are people's lives that we're dealing with, and there's a decision you can make that can make a difference in their lives. And so you got to be very careful. And I allow it to happen. I mean, it's hard sometimes because it can be exhausting because you hear a story that's super sad, or we just lost an employee like last week, and we had lost another employee last month, and I'm just like, oh, we're a young new company, but these are, we're dealing with people's lives and their families, and it's not just the people that work for us; it's everybody that they're providing for. So it's a huge responsibility. So I think that's the least we could do.
What do you do to prevent getting burnt out then?
Oh, I get burnt out. So you just got to take your weekends and try and, I love travel. So even though that, you get tired coming back from traveling, but, I think you definitely need to have time for yourself. Like I've always said, you got to take all your PTO. You got to, me personally, I want to see the world. I want to see as much as I can in my lifetime. So, it's work hard, play hard.
So, you talked about Worthing. You were there for 20 years, was it?
Yes.
Why stay at a company for so long?
It had such a, we had such great leadership. I learned so much there. And we were I said this the other day, because full circle, we ended up, we're a third-party management company, and we just got awarded a property from Worthing at this company. So I was just like, it's like, this is like, oh my gosh, this is such a neat experience. But we were really good at what we did. And it was a group of people that really never left. We were, there was very low turnover. We were very inward facing. Like we just did things. We're like, how can we do this better? How can we do this better? But we didn't really use we weren't watching what our competitors were doing. And so we laugh about that today, because we look back and we're like, we were really good and we didn't even know what we were doing. We were just making it up as we went along. So I think in my mind, I never thought I would leave. And then there was I left in 2009, which was when, the big recession happened. And not that I couldn't have stayed, I could have, but I ended up getting an opportunity with Greystar. And I was just like, well, maybe I should try something else, especially in this period where we can't really develop. And so I jumped over there for 2.5 years, and that was such a great experience because, went to, even back then, it was the largest management company, and it's not anywhere near the size it is today. But I really learned how to run a business. And I learned how to sell. Like I never really had to do that at Worthing. We had such a good name. People just came to us and it's like, oh, will you manage our property? We're like, we'll think about it. Okay. Where at Greystar, my job, which I don't think I realized that taking the job, but 50% of my job was going out and getting new business. I'm like, that's not my personality, but it taught me how to do it. And now I love it. I do that today. It's a big part of my job today. Then I was just at Greystar a couple years. It was a little bit too big for me. Okay. I'm a little bit more of an entrepreneurial type spirit, especially growing up with the Worthing companies.
And what is the culture difference between a huge general, not Greystar in particular, but a huge management company versus like a smaller boutique? I think on the surface, it's probably entrepreneurial, right? Do more. Anything else that stands out?
I loved working for Greystar, but I think how I was saying, I got to do all the different types of things. When you're in a larger company, you're a little bit more boxed in. Like this is your role. Like you don't need to tell somebody else how to do their role. This is what your responsibility is. So I did miss that piece. So I got an opportunity to go over, at the time, the company's name was Pollock Shores. They wanted to start their own management company, which we named Matrix, which later became Rangewater. And so we did that. That was my next job, which I stayed there 11 years. And we grew that from, I think my first day there, we had 4 properties. And when I left, it was with the properties we had awarded on top of what we were managing, was almost 400. So crazy growth. Yeah.
That's crazy. 100x in 10 years.
Yes. It was fun. And then I found myself, needing to decide what to do one more time. And so I actually took a couple months off and went and just talked to everybody, got to meet all the, heads of a lot of the larger companies out there, which was very exciting. But I realized that it would sort of be going into that box. If I took a job at one of those firms, it would be going back into a box where, all right, you can maybe do one or two of your favorite things, but you can't do all 10. So that's when gallery. We can just do it all.
So what was going through? Okay, so the reason for starting it makes sense to me. But what I want to understand though is, where did you get the courage? Because it is pretty risky, right? In some ways, on the surface, to go from something that is stable and you understand and you can do a good job to now taking nothing and like creating something net new.
I know. I look back now and I was like, I should have been scared, but I wasn't. I wasn't scared. And,
what were you feeling? What were the emotions you're feeling?
Well, I have a partner, Bruce Sanders, who worked with me at Rangewater, and he was our CFO. And so we decided to join forces and do this together, which is great because you can, we're really opposites. So he's great at building the infrastructure and hold us accountable, where I was more focused on, new business, dealing with the clients, with the employees, the culture pieces, that type of thing. So, so it's really crazy because we started it and we didn't even have a client. Usually when people start a management company, they already have a client in mind. I was like, we did that. We didn't even have a client. But a couple months in, we came up with the idea maybe April 2023, and then hired our first employee June 1st, 2023. So 2 months later, got an office space, a name. And then by the end of June, we started bringing in clients. And then we took over properties in September. So started building the team from there.
I feel like you guys have grown incredibly fast, though. I didn't realize this was April 2023. It's like 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are the biggest differences of you now having to own everything truly versus, having a senior role at another company like Rangewater or Worthing?
Well, I think I think even though I didn't own it at the other companies, I still felt very responsible, especially for the people, because what happens in our industry are properties transact and they sell. And then we don't always have control over who the new management company is going to be. 75% of the time we lose management. So that piece, I've learned how to deal with that, where you can imagine in the early days, I would have many sleepless nights thinking these people aren't going to have jobs. It's my responsibility. But I've learned over the years, it's just like everything works out. They will end up with this place for everyone, and it unbelievably, it does. Like at the end of the day, anyone that wants to stay with us, we usually have a position for. And so I've taught myself that, you need to have your sleep. It's important that you sleep. So I'm very good at getting my full 8 hours. But, I try not to be a worrier. And so, I don't actually, there is more responsibility now, but it doesn't feel that different to me, because really the responsibility is you're responsible for people's jobs. And I felt like I had that before too.
Yeah, what's really interesting when I talk to you is it feels like I don't know if it seems like it's part of your personality, but you have this like ability to like make something seem less complex than it is. Mm-hmm. I feel like
in my MIS degree.
Yeah, MIS degree, exactly. I feel like, I hear everything you're saying, but I think it sounds like you're kind of making it out to be easier than it was, and there's no way it was that simple.
You break it down.
Let's break it down.
Break it down, and then you're like, okay, I can control this. And then you just start breaking it down, and it's same with property performance. Like you can break it down into pieces. You can figure out why a property is not performing, and it's and it's the 4 Ps that you learned in marketing class. If you took a marketing class, I literally learned this at University of Georgia in 1986. It's people, product, promotion, and price. So a product is not, if it's not successful, it's because one of those 4 P's is not right. A lot of times it is the people piece. So you have to be very focused on making sure. And that's why, we bring the Enneagram into the teams on site, because if that team is tight and working as one, they can move a mountain. If there's issues going on, somebody doesn't like the other person, they won't work. And so this industry is it's a huge team with a lot of little teams, and they all have to be working. And so then, of course, you can, so it's people. The product is basically the product as much under your control needs, which it doesn't cost a lot to be clean. When you drive a property, when you walk a property, there's expectations that need to be there, and you can tell immediately if there's an issue. Mm-hmm. And then promotion. Now, in today's world, it's really your digital campaigns and how all that's going, if that's going well. And then if all 3 of those are, running on all 6 cylinders are great and your property's still not performing, then it's a price issue. So you wait and don't adjust pricing last. So
I was just asking you, how does one grow from 0 to 18,000 units in 2 years?
So we've been lucky, and we were awarded 3 portfolios. So that really helped, right? So that was one portfolio. 2 portfolios have 20 properties. One has 10. So is that right? Maybe a little bit less, but around 40% of what we're managing are those 3 portfolios, and then we have 25% of who we're managing for were groups we've managed for in the past. 75% are new ownership groups that we haven't worked with before. So it's just really been from referrals. So it could be from the brokerage community. It could be friends of people we're currently managing for. Would refer their friends to us. And, we have a nice size new business team where that's what, myself and Blake, Janine, Robert, there's 4 of us that are basically just working on new clients. We're providing market surveys, budgets, things like that to help them with their process of either buying a property or developing a property.
How is I'm just curious, how has the economics changed over the last 2 decades with property management? Has it become more lucrative or less lucrative?
It's actually, in all, fees have gone down, but rents have gone up. So we're paid based on our revenue. So if a property, typically, what they bring in revenue wise, we're making a percentage off of that revenue. And, it's so I would say it's more about efficiencies. So, each regional manager can handle up to 8 properties. I would say 6 to 8. So you don't want to have 4 regionals that only have 2 or 3 properties, because that's being inefficient. So it's basically managing your efficiencies is sort of the secret. And payroll is 70% of what of our income. So that's really our main, besides, then there's some travel and some insurance expenses, maybe a little rent, but 70% of what we do is payroll.
Wow. So on that note, I guess, where do you feel like AI is going then? And if 70% of payroll, 70% of expenses is payroll, and right now we see AI leasing agents, rent collections, all of that stuff. Where do you feel like the next opportunity is with AI?
Me personally, that's not where I find where I think AI is going to assist us, companies like Gallery, because what we're trying to do is bring in that great customer service experience. So hospitality is number 1. So it's very hard to do if you don't have the human capital there, right? So like a lot of talk today is about more centralized teams. So when you have a centralized team, you're pulling people off of your on-site staff, and that really hurts the experience piece. So we're trying to figure that out of where we feel the future for, centralized or AI is going to have its place. I mean, right now where it's helping us is, we have beautiful storybooks. Like we tell a story to ChatGPT, and then what comes out is like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's so each property that we have, we build out a storybook. So, or a playbook, storybook of what the property's theme is, why was it named this? This is, its location, its neighborhood. And so we build out that. So we use AI to help us with those tasks.
And what about other, I guess, even internal operations that you feel like right now are pretty time consuming? Whether it's, an example of something that's come up is reporting, right? Like doing your owner reporting.
Yes, that would be great. Yeah,
I'm actually I spent before this the last couple hours writing an investor update for our investors, and I used AI to help clean it up and consolidate it. But what other an example like that? What other workflows do you feel like people are not paying attention to that are super manual today? Is there anything that comes to mind?
In the service requests or work orders, that definitely has, and I think there's already things in place, but just perfecting that and being able to, follow up and identifying areas where the property isn't performing, using AI there. I love the owner's report piece because that's, these people are people. They don't love writing reports, and AI should be able to generate most of it, where we just go in and fine tune it. So I will love when that gets to be when that's in a good place, which I think we're already in the works there. But yeah, there are some manual tasks that we do, but again, I don't want it to take away from the whole human experience. And I think, when we're managing a property and we have 5 other properties in our neighborhood that really look just like ours, how are you going to differentiate yourself? You have to differentiate with the whole customer experience. And so that's what we're doing. We're putting, like when you talk to Melania, and I'm sure she told you about her artist in residence program. Well, that's just has exploded. And we're putting artists in buildings. We're making that part of our story, putting that into our storybook. So for us, we're really focusing on those type things and not as much technology. We're using technology to enhance the experience, but not to take over the experience. Yeah,
and that was one of my personal learnings, having done signed a lease recently to live in LA, is that I did a dozen tours or something, because my previous place in San Francisco, I had not done any tours. And I just chose something and realized how impactful the place that I'm staying in the neighborhood I'm staying in is to my life. We literally moved from, a large part of it was we were in San Francisco during COVID, and the apartment in the location we chose was just so bad that it literally made us influenced our decision to move to LA. So when I signed my new place, I was super intentional about it. And one of my findings was that the experience of the tour actually made a big difference. Because when you're doing 12 tours or 15 tours, things start to blur.
Right.
And what you remember is the experience during the tour, the way the leasing agent showed the building.
Right.
Do you feel like this person is reliable if you have an issue? Is there a sense of community? And having gone through that firsthand was really eye-opening to me as to, and helping me inform how we think about product at Zuma, is how important that human experience is.
I mean, even when I buy a car, I end up buying it from the person I like the best. It's that's not the reason to do it, but I can't help myself. But that's the same thing that we're trying to do. What we're trying to teach our on-site teams is be curious, dig in, find out, we're hiring people that really like people, and as the end result, we should be able to have higher performing properties than our competitors. So that's really what we're going after.
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference on the experience. I think you're admitting it, but on the fact that you buy from people you like. But the reality is, like, most people think they don't buy that way, but they actually do.
Right.
Like, we're rational to some degree, but we're largely emotional beings, right? Like our emotions influence our decisions quite a bit. So that makes total sense. Well, Tracy, thank you so much. This has been really fun. I feel like we covered a bunch of topics, and I'm glad we got to reschedule this, and I didn't miss you while I was in Atlanta. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great. I enjoyed it.
Thanks.